The twin suns of Zelthara Prime cast their gentle light across crystal cities that had stood for 10,000 years. The towers rose like frozen music from the planet's surface, each one carved from a single massive gem that caught and held the starlight. Inside these beautiful structures, the Zeltharian people went about their peaceful lives, never knowing that death was coming from the dark between the stars. Elder Vashatai stood in the highest tower of the capital city, his tall, thin body glowing softly as all his people did. His skin was like clear glass filled with warm light, and when he moved, colors danced beneath the surface. He was old even by Zeltharian standards and had seen many changes in his long life. But nothing had prepared him for what was happening now. The first reports had come 3 days ago. Strange ships at the edge of their system, moving toward them with purpose. The Zeltharians had tried to make contact, sending messages of welcome and friendship as they always did with visitors. But the ships had not answered. They had only come closer. Now those ships hung in the sky like dark wounds against the stars. They were huge things, each one the size of a small moon, covered in what looked like black armor. They reminded Vashtai of the insects that sometimes crawled out of the deep caves on his world, all sharp edges and hungry movements. The attack had begun at dawn. The alien ships had opened fire without warning, sending streams of burning plasma down onto the crystal cities. Where the plasma struck, the beautiful towers cracked and shattered, their light dying as the crystal turned black and cold. The Zeltharians had tried to fight back with their energy shields and beam weapons, but their defenses might as well have been paper against fire. Vashatai watched from his tower as another district of the city exploded in flames. His people were running in the streets below, their glowing forms like scattered stars as they fled from the destruction. But there was nowhere to run. The alien ships were everywhere, and more kept coming through the dark of space. A younger Zeltharian burst into the chamber, his light flickering with fear and exhaustion. This was Kethran, one of the few military leaders his peaceful people had. Even calling him a military leader was stretching the truth. The Zeltharians had not fought a real war in over 1,000 years. "Elder," Kethran said, his voice like wind chimes in a storm. "The northern cities are gone, completely destroyed. We estimate that half our population is dead or missing. Our defenses cannot stop them." Vashatai felt something inside him grow cold. Half their population. Millions of lives snuffed out in 3 days by these monsters from space. His people had always believed that intelligence and goodness would protect them from harm. They had been wrong. "What are they?" he asked. "What do they want?" "We don't know what they are," Kethran replied. "But we know what they want. Everything. They're stripping the minerals from our planet, harvesting our crystal formations, taking everything they can carry. Our scientists think they're some kind of swarm species like locusts, but in space." Through the tower's crystal walls, Vashatai could see one of the alien ships hovering over a residential district. As he watched, mechanical arms extended from its belly and began tearing apart the buildings, sucking up the debris into the ship's massive cargo holds. The aliens were not just killing his people. They were eating his world. "Have we heard anything from the other worlds?" he asked. "Any response to our distress calls?" Kethran's light dimmed even more. "The Althurian Republic says they are too far away to help. The Ethereal Collective claims they cannot spare ships from their own defense. The Nexus Federation offers their sympathy, but says the risk is too great for their forces." Vashtai was not surprised, but he was disappointed. The galaxy was full of advanced civilizations, species with great fleets and powerful weapons. But when faced with a real threat, they all found excuses to look the other way. His people had always been the same way, preferring to study and create rather than fight. Now they were paying the price for their gentleness. "Send the message again," he said quietly. "Broadcast it on all frequencies as far as our transmitters can reach. Someone out there has to care enough to help. Elder, we have already sent it to every known civilization. There is no one left to contact except..." Kethran hesitated. "Except who?" "The Outer Rim worlds. The primitive systems. The places where the Deathworlders live." Vashtai knew about the Deathworlders, though he had never seen one. They were species that came from planets so dangerous and hostile that just surviving on them turned the inhabitants into natural warriors. Most civilized people avoided them, considering them too violent and unpredictable to deal with safely. The few reports that existed described them as aggressive, stubborn, and prone to solving problems with force rather than reason. But right now, Aggression and force were exactly what his people needed. Send the message to them too, he said. All of them. Even if they are primitive, even if they are violent, they might be our only hope. Catherine bowed and hurried away to carry out the order. Vashti remained in his tower, watching his world die. The alien ships continued their work, methodically destroying everything his people had built over thousands of years. Soon there would be nothing left but empty rock and the memory of a civilization that had believed goodness was enough to protect them. Far away in space, the distress signal traveled through hyperspace, reaching dozens of worlds. It carried a simple message. This is Elder Vashti of Zelthara Prime. Our world is under attack by an unknown species. They are destroying our cities and killing our people. We have tried to resist, but we are not warriors. If anyone receives this message, if anyone can help us, please respond. We do not want to die. We do not want our children to die. Please, if there is anyone out there who will listen, we need help. Most of the civilized worlds had already heard the message and turned away, but now it reached new ears, traveling to systems that were listed in the Galactic databases as dangerous or primitive, places where the people had to fight just to stay alive on their own planets, places where helping strangers was considered normal instead of foolish. On a small blue world orbiting an unremarkable yellow star, Admiral Kate Morrison sat in her office reading reports. Earth was not considered an important world by galactic standards. Its people were young, aggressive, and came from a planet so hostile that other species called them Deathworlders. Most civilized races avoided contact with humans, considering them too unpredictable and violent. But when the distress signal from Zelthara Prime reached Earth, Admiral Morrison did something that the other civilized species had not. She listened to the whole message. She heard the fear and desperation in the alien voice. She understood that somewhere across the galaxy, innocent people were dying while everyone else made excuses not to help. She looked at the tactical reports on her desk, calculating distances and response times. Zelthara Prime was far away, beyond the normal patrol routes of the Earth Defense Force. Getting there would require a long, dangerous journey through uncharted space. And when they arrived, they would be facing an enemy that had already defeated a planetary defense system. Any reasonable military commander would file the message away and forget about it. Admiral Morrison was not a reasonable military commander. She was a Deathworlder, raised on a planet where people helped each other survive against impossible odds. And right now, somewhere in the galaxy, people needed help. She reached for her communicator and opened a channel to the EDF destroyer Valiant. It was time to show the galaxy what Deathworlders did when innocents called for help. Captain Jake Sullivan stood on the bridge of the EDF destroyer Valiant, looking out at the stars that would soon become his battlefield. The ship was not the biggest in the Earth Defense Force, but it was fast and well-armed, with a crew of 50 of the best people Earth had to offer. Now they were all volunteers on what everyone knew was probably a suicide mission. The orders from Admiral Morrison had been clear but simple. A peaceful alien race was under attack by an unknown enemy. Every other civilization in the galaxy had refused to help. Earth would not make the same choice. The Valiant was the only ship that could reach the battle zone in time to make a difference. If any difference could be made at all. Jake had been a captain for 8 years, long enough to know when a mission was impossible. The enemy they were flying toward had already destroyed half a planet and defeated whatever defenses the aliens had. His single ship would be facing an entire invasion fleet with no backup and no way home if things went wrong. Any sane military commander would have refused the mission, but Jake Sullivan had not become a captain by being sane. He had earned his rank by doing what needed to be done, no matter how dangerous or stupid it seemed. And right now what needed to be done was simple. Innocent people were dying, and no one else was willing to help them. The bridge crew worked quietly around him, preparing for a battle they might not survive. Lieutenant Lisa Carter sat at the tactical station, her fingers dancing over the controls as she ran combat simulations. She had been a Marine before joining the Space Force, and her record showed more successful ground operations than anyone her age should have seen. If they ended up fighting hand-to-hand with aliens, she would be ready. At the engineering station, Chief Bobby Torres monitored the ship's systems with the focused attention of a man who knew that one small mistake could kill everyone on board. He had grown up in the asteroid mining colonies where equipment failure meant death, and there was no one to call for help. His steady hands had kept dozens of ships running long past their design limits. Dr. Alex Murphy moved between the bridge and the medical bay, checking on crew members and preparing for casualties. He had served in 3 different war zones on Earth before joining the Space Force, and his steady nerves had saved more lives than he could count. If people got hurt in the coming battle, he would be ready to put them back together. Communications Officer Nina Walsh sat at her station with multiple displays showing alien language patterns and translation matrices. She spoke 7 Earth languages fluently and had been studying alien communications for 5 years. If they needed to talk to anyone out there, she would find a way to make it work. Jake looked at each of them in turn, knowing that he was probably leading them all to their deaths. But when Admiral Morrison had asked for volunteers, every single person on the ship had stepped forward. They all knew what they were flying into, and they had all chosen to come anyway. "Status report," he said, settling into his captain's chair. "Hyperspace engines are running at 100%, Torres reported. "All weapon systems are charged and ready. Hull integrity is perfect. She's ready for whatever we're going to face, Captain." "Tactical systems are online," Carter added. "I've loaded every combat program we have, plus a few new ones I wrote myself. If these aliens want to fight, we'll give them one." "Medical bay is prepared for mass casualties," Murphy said quietly. "I've got enough supplies to handle anything short of total ship destruction. Let's hope I don't need to use them all." "Communication arrays are operating at maximum range," Walsh reported. "I've been studying the alien distress signal, trying to learn their language. I think I can manage basic communication if we need it." Jake nodded, satisfied that his crew was as ready as they could be. The Valiant was not a miracle ship, and they were not superhuman. They were just 50 people from Earth who had decided that helping strangers was more important than staying safe. "How long until we reach the battle zone?" he asked. 6 hours, Captain, Torres replied. "That's pushing the engines harder than they're supposed to go, but I can keep us together that long." 6 hours to prepare for a battle against an enemy they knew nothing about. Jake had fought in worse situations, but not many. At least on Earth, he had always known what he was fighting and why. This time all he knew was that somewhere ahead of them, people were dying while the rest of the galaxy looked the other way. "All right, people," he said, standing up from his chair. "Let's talk about what we're walking into." The main screen lit up with the few images they had received from the alien distress signals. The planet looked beautiful from space, covered in crystal cities that gleamed like jewels in the light of twin suns. But the recent images showed something else entirely. Dark ships surrounded the planet like a swarm of insects, and many of the crystal cities were dark and broken. "The aliens call themselves Zeltharians," Jake continued. "They're peaceful, no real military to speak of. The enemy appears to be some kind of swarm species that strips planets for resources. The Zeltharians call them locusts, which gives you an idea of what we're dealing with." "How many enemy ships?" Carter asked. "Unknown." "The signals show at least 20 large vessels, but there could be more. Each one is the size of a small moon." Torres whistled softly. 20 ships that size against one destroyer. I've seen better odds in casino games." "The good news is that they don't seem to expect any resistance," Jake said. "Every other civilization in the galaxy has refused to help, so they probably think no one is coming. That gives us the element of surprise." "What's the bad news?" Murphy asked. "Everything else," Jake replied with a grim smile. "We don't know their weapons, their defenses, or their tactics. We don't know if our weapons will even work against their ships, and we don't know if we can communicate with the Zeltharians once we get there." "I can handle the communication problem," Walsh said. "Their language has some similarities to others I've studied. Give me a few hours and I should be able to manage basic conversation." "What about our weapons?" Carter asked. "Standard Earth military equipment against unknown alien technology. Any thoughts on how that might work out?" "Earth weapons are designed to work in environments that would kill most other species," Jake said. "Our ships are built to survive asteroid impacts and solar radiation. Our guns are made to punch through the hardest materials we can find. Maybe that will be enough, maybe it won't. But it's what we have." The truth was that none of them knew what would happen when human technology met alien warfare. Earth had only been part of the galactic community for 50 years, and most of that time had been spent avoiding contact with other species. The few encounters they had experienced had been peaceful, so there was no real data on how Earth weapons would perform in combat. But Jake had confidence in his people and his ship. The Valiant had been built in Earth's orbital shipyards using materials and techniques developed in the harsh environment of space. Every system on the ship had been tested against the worst conditions Earth's solar system could provide. If it could survive in space around Earth, it might just survive whatever these aliens could throw at it. "I want everyone to get some rest," he said. "Eat a good meal, check your equipment, and try to sleep if you can. In 6 hours we're going to drop out of hyperspace in the middle of an alien invasion. When that happens, we're going to be the only thing standing between those people and extinction." The crew began to disperse, each person heading to their station to make final preparations. Jake remained on the bridge, staring out at the stars and thinking about the message they had received from the dying planet. The alien's voice had been full of fear and desperation, but also hope. Hope that someone, somewhere, would care enough to help. Most of the galaxy had decided that helping strangers was not worth the risk. But humans had never been like most species. They came from a world that taught them to help each other survive no matter what the cost. And now they were going to show the galaxy what that meant. The Valiant flew through hyperspace toward a battle that would determine whether humanity deserved its reputation as dangerous deathworlders, or whether they were something else entirely. Something that the galaxy had forgotten how to be. In 6 hours they would have their answer. The Valiant dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Zelthara system, and Captain Jake Sullivan felt his heart sink at what he saw. The alien planet hung in space like a dying jewel, its once bright crystal cities now dark and broken. Around it swarmed dozens of massive alien ships, each one easily 10 times larger than his destroyer. They moved through space like giant insects, their dark hulls bristling with weapons and mechanical arms that reached down to tear pieces from the planet below. "Dear God," whispered Dr. Murphy from his station. "How many of them are there?" Communications Officer Walsh was already working at her console, her fingers flying over the controls as she tried to count the enemy vessels. "I'm reading at least 30 large ships, Captain. Maybe more hiding behind the planet. Each one is the size of a small city." Jake stared at the tactical display, doing quick calculations in his head. 30 ships against 1. Each enemy vessel outgunned his destroyer by a factor of at least 50. Any rational military commander would retreat immediately and report that the situation was hopeless. But Jake Sullivan had not come this far to turn around now. Somewhere on that dying planet, innocent people were waiting for help that everyone else had refused to give. The fact that it was impossible just made it more important to try. "Nina, can you raise anyone on the planet?" he asked. "I'm trying, Captain. There's a lot of interference from the alien ships, but I think I'm getting something." She pressed her earpiece tighter and frowned in concentration. "Yes, I've got a signal. Very weak, but it's definitely the same language from the distress call. Put it through." The bridge speakers crackled with static, and then a weak voice came through, speaking in musical tones that sounded like wind chimes. Walsh worked frantically at her translation program, and after a moment the computer began converting the alien words into English. "This is Elder Vashatai of Zelthara Prime," the translated voice said. "If anyone can hear this message, our people are dying. The invaders have destroyed most of our cities. We have perhaps hours before our world is completely stripped of life. Please, if there is anyone out there who can help us, we are running out of time." Jake felt a cold anger settle in his chest. The enemy had been methodically destroying this peaceful civilization for days, while the galaxy's great powers made excuses. Well, the excuses stopped here. "Nina, can you send a reply?" "I think so, Captain. The translation program is getting better at their language. Send this message. This is Captain Sullivan of the Earth vessel Valiant. We received your call for help. Hold on. The cavalry is coming." As Walsh transmitted the message, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The enemy had spotted them. "Multiple contacts turning toward us," Carter reported from the tactical station. "I count 12 ships breaking off from the main fleet. They're moving fast. Time to intercept?" Jake asked. 4 minutes, Captain." Jake looked around his bridge at the 50 people who had volunteered to fly into this nightmare with him. They were scared. He could see it in their faces, but none of them were backing down. "All right, people. This is what we came here to do. Bobby, give me everything the engines have. Lisa, target the lead ship and prepare to fire on my command. Alex, stand by for casualties. Nina, keep that channel to the planet open. I want them to know they're not alone." The enemy ships were closing fast, their hulls glowing with energy as weapon systems charged. Jake could see them clearly now on the main screen. They looked exactly like the insects he had imagined, all sharp angles and predatory grace. Bioplasma cannons emerged from weapon ports along their sides, ready to tear his ship apart. "They're opening fire," Carter announced. Streams of superheated plasma lanced through space toward the Valiant. Jake threw the ship into evasive maneuvers, using every trick he had learned in 20 years of flying. The first salvo missed by meters, close enough that the ship's hull groaned from the heat. "Return fire," he ordered. The Valiant's main guns opened up, sending streams of accelerated metal projectiles toward the nearest enemy ship. The rounds struck its hull and exploded in brilliant flashes, but when the light faded, the alien vessel was still there, apparently undamaged. "Our weapons are having minimal effect," Carter reported. "Their armor is too thick for standard projectiles." More plasma beams swept past the ship as Jake threw it into a spinning dive toward the planet's largest moon. The enemy ships followed, firing continuously, turning space around the human vessel into a web of deadly energy. "Captain," Torres called from engineering, "I'm reading massive power spikes from those alien ships. Whatever they're using for weapons, it's putting out more energy than our entire reactor." Jake gritted his teeth as another plasma beam scorched past the bridge windows. They needed an edge, some advantage that would let them fight ships 10 times their size. Then he remembered where he was fighting. This was not open space. This was a planetary system, full of gravity wells and obstacles that could be used as weapons. "Bobby, plot a course for the inner moon. Maximum acceleration." "Captain, that will take us right through their formation." "I'm counting on it." "Lisa, prepare the mining charges." Carter looked puzzled. "Sir, those are for asteroid mining. They won't do much damage to ships that size." "They will if we use them right." "Nina, send another message to the planet. Tell them we're about to make some noise." The Valiant dove toward the moon at full speed, the enemy ships in pursuit. Jake waited until they were deep in the moon's gravity well before making his move. "Fire the mining charges. All of them." The charges were designed to break up asteroids for mining operations, not to fight starships. But Jake was not using them as weapons. He was using them as tools. The explosions tore through the moon's crust, sending massive chunks of rock flying in all directions. The pursuing alien ships found themselves flying through a field of debris, moving at tremendous speed. Their weapons were designed to fight other spaceships, not to clear obstacles from their path. Several of the vessels collided with rock fragments, their hulls cracking under the impact. "It's working," Carter shouted. 2 enemy ships are heavily damaged. They're falling behind, but there were still 10 more closing on them, and the Valiant was running out of tricks. Jake pulled the ship out of the moon's gravity well and headed for the planet's atmosphere, hoping to find some advantage in the thin air above the dying world. The enemy ships followed, their weapons blazing. One plasma beam caught the Valiant's port side, and the ship shuddered as armor plating melted away. Damage alarms sounded throughout the vessel. "Hull breach on Deck 3, Murphy reported. "I'm sealing it now, but we can't take many more hits like that." Jake dove the ship into the planet's upper atmosphere, using the friction to mask their heat signature. The alien ships were too large to follow safely, but they continued firing from above, their plasma beams lighting up the sky like deadly aurora. Below them, Jake could see the remains of the crystal cities. Many were completely dark, their populations dead or fled, but some still glowed with faint light, showing that people were still alive down there, still hoping for rescue. "Nina, are you still in contact with the planet?" "Yes, Captain. Elder Vashitai is asking what we need them to do. Tell him to get his people to the deepest shelters they have. This is about to get very rough." Jake pulled the ship up out of the atmosphere and found himself face to face with the entire alien fleet. Dozens of massive vessels hung in space before him, their weapons trained on his single destroyer. It was a sight that should have meant certain death. Instead, Jake smiled. "Bobby, remember that crazy stunt we pulled during the asteroid pirates incident?" Torres grinned back at him. "The one where we nearly blew up half the mining colony?" "That's the one. Think you can do it again, but bigger?" "Captain, that's completely insane." "Good. Do it." The Valiant accelerated toward the alien fleet at maximum speed, looking for all the world like a ship making a desperate suicide run. The enemy vessels opened fire with everything they had, filling space with deadly plasma. But Jake was not planning to ram them. He was planning something much more creative. The Valiant screamed toward the largest alien ship at full speed, plasma beams lighting up space around it like deadly fireworks. To the enemy, it looked like a desperate suicide attack by a doomed vessel. They had no way of knowing that Captain Jake Sullivan had something entirely different in mind. "Bobby, are the modifications ready?" Jake shouted over the noise of alarms and weapons fire. Chief Torres worked frantically at his console, sweat beading on his forehead as he rerouted power through systems that were never designed to handle this kind of stress. "Almost there, Captain. Just need 30 more seconds." "We don't have 30 seconds, Lieutenant Carter called from Tactical. "Impact in 20 seconds and counting." Jake watched the massive alien vessel grow larger on the screen. It was a monster of bioengineering, its hull covered in what looked like living armor that pulsed with its own heartbeat. Weapon ports opened along its sides like hungry mouths, preparing to swallow his small ship in plasma fire. At the last possible moment, Jake pulled the ship into a sharp turn that should have torn it apart. The Valiant skimmed along the alien vessel's hull, so close that the two ships were almost touching. The enemy's weapons could not track something moving so fast at such close range. "Now, Bobby, now." Torres triggered the modified mining charges that he had attached to the ship's hull. Instead of exploding outward like normal bombs, these had been turned into shaped charges that focused all their energy in one direction. The explosions tore through the alien ship's bioarmor like paper, opening a hole just large enough for a human destroyer to fit through. The Valiant plunged into the alien vessel's interior before anyone could react. Jake felt the ship shake as they crashed through internal bulkheads and corridors. Their reinforced hull designed for asteroid mining proving stronger than the organic structures inside the enemy ship. They came to rest deep inside what looked like a vast cathedral made of living tissue. The walls pulsed with alien life, and strange lights flickered in patterns that hurt to look at directly. The air was filled with a sound like thousands of insects buzzing in harmony. "Where are we?" Dr. Murphy asked, staring at the readings from his medical scanners. "Inside their command ship," Jake replied, studying the tactical display. "Nina, are you picking up any communication signals?" Communications Officer Walsh nodded, her face pale as she listened to the alien transmissions flowing around them. "Captain, there's something you need to know. This isn't just a warship, it's some kind of control center for their entire fleet. The signals I'm reading suggest that all the other ships take their orders from this one." Jake felt a surge of hope. If they could disable this ship's command systems, they might be able to stop the entire invasion. "Can you tell where the control center is?" "I think so. The signals are strongest toward what I think is the ship's core. But Captain, there's something else. I'm reading massive life signs throughout the ship. There are thousands of aliens between us and the control center. Then we go through them," Jake said simply. The crew of the Valiant had known this might happen. When they volunteered for the mission, they had understood that they might end up fighting hand-to-hand with aliens in the corridors of enemy ships. None of them had expected to enjoy the experience, but all of them were ready for it. Jake opened the ship's communication system to address his entire crew. "All hands, this is the captain. We're inside the enemy command ship. Our mission is to reach their control center and shut down their fleet coordination. I won't lie to you. This is going to be dangerous. But somewhere on that planet below us, innocent people are counting on us to succeed. Let's not let them down." The crew armed themselves with standard Earth military equipment, projectile weapons that could punch through most known materials. Body armor designed to protect against everything from laser fire to chemical attacks. Emergency medical supplies and communications equipment. It was not much to take into battle against an unknown alien species, but it was what they had. Jake led the first team out of the ship's airlock and into the alien vessel's corridors. The interior of the ship was like nothing he had ever seen. The walls were covered in what looked like veins and arteries, pulsing with fluid that glowed with its own light. The air was thick and humid, filled with strange smells that made his nose burn. They had gone less than 50 meters when they encountered their first aliens. The creatures that came around the corner were nightmares made real. Each one was the size of a large man but moved on 6 legs like a giant insect. Their bodies were covered in black armor that looked like it had grown, rather than been manufactured. Their faces were hidden behind helmets, but Jake could see multiple eyes glowing red in the darkness. "Contact front," Carter called, raising her weapon. The battle was brief and violent. The aliens moved fast, but they were not prepared for the concentrated firepower of Earth military weapons. Jake's team cut through the first group in seconds, their projectile weapons punching through alien armor with devastating effect. But more aliens were coming. Jake could hear them moving through the corridors around him, their chittering calls echoing through the ship like the sound of a disturbed hive. Whatever controlled this vessel had realized that it had been invaded, and it was sending everything it had to stop the intruders. "Move fast," Jake ordered. "We need to reach that control center before they can organize a real defense." The human crew fought their way through corridor after corridor of alien defenders. The creatures were tough and brave, but they had never faced opponents like humans. The aliens fought as a group, coordinating their attacks like parts of a single organism. The humans fought as individuals, each person adapting to the situation in their own way, making decisions that their enemies could not predict or counter. Dr. Murphy moved through the battle like a man possessed, treating wounded crew members even as weapons fire exploded around him. His steady hands never shook as he patched up injuries and got people back into the fight. When alien claws tore through Lieutenant Peterson's armor, Murphy had him patched and ready to fight again in under 2 minutes. Torres used his engineering skills to turn the ship's own systems against its crew. He figured out how to overload the alien lighting systems, plunging entire sections into darkness that favored the human attackers. He found ways to seal blast doors behind them, slowing down the alien reinforcements. Carter led assault teams with the tactical brilliance that had made her a legend in the Marines. She used demolition charges to blow holes in walls, creating new routes that bypassed the alien defenses. When the creatures tried to set up ambushes, she found ways around them that left the aliens confused and exposed. Walsh worked constantly to decode the alien communication systems, giving the team advance warning of where the next attack was coming from. Her linguistic training allowed her to understand the patterns in the alien signals, turning their own coordination against them. As they fought deeper into the ship, Jake began to understand something about their enemies. The aliens were not individuals like humans. They were parts of a larger whole, like cells in a body or workers in a hive. They could coordinate perfectly, but they could not adapt when faced with something unexpected. Humans, on the other hand, were chaos made flesh. Each person thought differently, acted differently, and solved problems in their own unique way. The aliens could not predict what humans would do because humans themselves often did not know until they did it. The final battle came at the entrance to the ship's core chamber. 100 alien warriors stood between the humans and their target, arranged in perfect formation with overlapping fields of fire. It was a defensive position that should have been impossible to break. Jake looked at his crew, now reduced to 30 people by the running battle through the ship's corridors. They were tired, wounded, and low on ammunition. Any rational commander would have retreated. Instead, Jake smiled. "All right, people. One more push. Nina, can you jam their communications?" "For about 30 seconds, Captain. That's all we need." "Bobby, still got those emergency charges?" "2 left, Captain." "Lisa, remember that crazy flanking maneuver you used on Titan?" Carter grinned back at him. "The one that got me court-martialed?" "That's the one. Think it will work on aliens? Only one way to find out." Jake looked at the impossible defensive position ahead of them, manned by creatures that had never known defeat. Then he looked at his crew of stubborn, creative, absolutely insane humans. Let's show them what Deathworlders do when someone tells them something is impossible. The final assault began with chaos, as all human plans did. Communications Officer Walsh jammed the alien communication systems, while Chief Torres threw his demolition charges at the defensive line. The explosions tore holes in the perfect formation, and Lieutenant Carter led her team through the gaps like water flowing around rocks. Captain Jake Sullivan ran with them, his weapon firing at targets that moved too fast to see clearly. The aliens fought back with desperate fury, but they were confused without their communication network. They had never learned to fight as individuals, only as parts of a greater whole. When that whole was broken, they became lost and vulnerable. The battle lasted exactly 4 minutes. When the smoke cleared, 30 humans stood among the bodies of 100 alien warriors. They were wounded and exhausted, their ammunition nearly gone, but they had won. The entrance to the ship's core lay open before them. Jake led his remaining crew through the massive doorway and into a chamber that took his breath away. The room was enormous, its ceiling lost in shadows high above. The walls were covered in organic computers that pulsed with alien life, their surfaces crawling with patterns of light that hurt to look at directly. And in the center of it all stood a structure that could only be the command center. It looked like a giant brain made of crystal and flesh, suspended in a web of cables and tubes. Energy flowed through it in patterns too complex for human eyes to follow. This was the heart of the alien fleet, the central nervous system that coordinated the destruction of entire worlds. As Jake approached the structure, something unexpected happened. A voice spoke inside his head, not through his ears, but directly into his thoughts. It was cold and alien, with an intelligence that felt vast and empty at the same time. "You are the Deathworlders," the voice said. "We have heard of your kind. Primitive beings from a savage planet who solve all problems with violence." Jake stopped walking, his crew gathering around him. They could all hear the voice, and none of them liked what it was saying. "You have come here to destroy us," the voice continued. "But you do not understand what we are. We are order. We are efficiency. We take the chaos of individual worlds and make them part of something greater. We bring peace through unity." "You bring death," Jake replied, speaking aloud to the alien intelligence. "I've seen what you did to those people down there. That's not peace. That's murder." The Zeltharians were weak and divided. Each individual thought only of themselves. We would have made them part of something stronger, something that could last forever. Their sacrifice would have served the greater good. Jake felt anger rising in his chest. This thing talked about the deaths of millions of innocent people like they were numbers in an equation. "And what gives you the right to make that choice for them? We are strong. They are weak. That is the only right that matters in this universe. Survival of the fittest. The strong consume the weak, and the weak serve the strong. This is the natural order." Dr. Murphy stepped forward, his medical bag still in his hand despite the wounds on his arms. "That's not natural order. That's just being a bully." The alien intelligence seemed puzzled by this response. "You do not understand. We offer them immortality as part of our collective. Individual death in exchange for collective life. It is a fair trade. Nobody asked them if they wanted to make that trade," Lieutenant Carter said, checking her weapon. "You just decided for them. Because we are superior. We know what is best. Individual minds are chaotic, unpredictable, inefficient. They make poor decisions based on emotion and self-interest. We eliminate that weakness." Chief Torres was already working on the control systems, his engineer's mind trying to understand how the alien technology functioned. "Captain, I think I can overload their main processor, but it's going to take a few minutes." "Do it," Jake ordered. Then he turned back to the alien intelligence. "You want to know what makes us different from you? You see chaos where we see creativity. You see weakness where we see strength. Every human thinks differently, acts differently, and solves problems in their own way. That's not a bug in our system. It's a feature. Your individuality will be your destruction. You cannot coordinate like we do. You cannot act with perfect efficiency. You are flawed." Communications Officer Walsh looked up from her equipment. "Captain, I'm picking up signals from the planet. Elder Vashti is trying to reach us. Put him through." The Zeltharian's voice came through the speakers, weak but determined. "Captain Sullivan, can you hear me?" "The alien ships have stopped attacking. They're just sitting there, not moving. What did you do?" Jake looked at the alien control center, where Torres was working frantically to understand systems that had never been designed for human minds. "We're trying to turn off their coordination system. How are your people?" "Wounded but alive. Many of our cities are destroyed, but the survivors are coming out of the shelters. Captain, we cannot thank you enough for what you have done. No one else would help us." The alien intelligence heard this conversation and spoke again, its voice filled with what might have been confusion. "This makes no sense. You came here to help people you had never met. People who can give you nothing in return. People who are not even the same species as you. Why?" Jake was quiet for a moment, thinking about how to explain something that seemed so obvious to him. "Because they asked for help. Because they were scared and alone and no one else would come. Because sometimes doing the right thing is more important than doing the smart thing. But there is no evolutionary advantage to helping strangers. It does not increase your chances of survival. It is inefficient. Maybe," Jake said, "but it's what makes us human." Torres called out from the control center. "Captain, I think I've got it figured out. This whole system is designed around the idea that everyone in the network thinks the same way. If I can introduce enough random variables, enough chaos, the whole thing should crash." "The chaos of human thought," the alien intelligence said, and now its voice sounded almost afraid. "You would destroy our perfect order with your flawed individuality." "Your perfect order is built on the graves of innocent people," Jake replied. Yeah, we're going to destroy it. You cannot. We are immortal. We are eternal. We have consumed 1,000 worlds and added their strength to our own. You are just one small ship with 50 primitives from a backwater planet. 50 primitives who showed up when no one else would, Carter said, aiming her weapon at the control center. 50 people who decided that helping strangers was worth dying for, Murphy added, still bandaging wounds while preparing for the final battle. 50 humans who don't know when to quit, Torres said, his hands dancing over alien controls as he introduced chaos into their perfect system. Walsh looked up from her communications equipment. 50 Deathworlders who came here because it was the right thing to do. Jake watched as his crew worked to destroy a system that had terrorized the galaxy for who knew how long. They were wounded, exhausted, and far from home. They had no chance of survival if this plan failed, but none of them hesitated. None of them complained, and none of them suggested giving up. You want to know what makes a Deathworlder? Jake asked the alien intelligence. It's not that we're stronger or smarter or better armed than everyone else. It's that we show up. When someone calls for help, when everyone else makes excuses or looks the other way, we show up. Even when it's stupid. Even when it's hopeless. Even when we know we probably won't make it home. The alien systems began to fail as Torres introduced more and more chaos into their networks. Warning lights flashed throughout the chamber, and the organic computer started smoking as they tried to process conflicting information. You are destroying everything, the alien intelligence screamed. Millions of years of evolution and progress gone because of your primitive emotions. Not everything, Jake said quietly. Just the part where you murder innocent people and call it progress. The command center exploded in a shower of sparks and alien blood. The intelligence's voice cut off abruptly, and Jake felt a strange silence settle over the ship. Through the chamber's organic walls, he could hear the sound of the alien fleet losing coordination, ships drifting apart as their central control system died. But the victory came with a price. The ship's life support systems were failing, and Jake realized that they were trapped inside a dying vessel with no way out. The Valiant was too damaged to fly, and the alien ship was breaking apart around them. He looked at his crew, these 50 people who had followed him across the galaxy to help strangers. They had succeeded in their mission, but they would not live to see the results. "Captain," Walsh called out, her voice excited, "I'm getting a signal from the planet." Multiple signals. The Zeltharians are sending ships to rescue us. Elder Vashti's voice came through the speakers, stronger now than it had been in days. "Captain Sullivan, our ships are on their way. You saved our world. Now let us save you." Jake smiled as he felt the dying alien ship shudder around him. They had done the impossible. A single human vessel had defeated an entire alien fleet, not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through the simple, stubborn refusal to let innocent people die while they could do something about it.